welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. Happy Tuesday. I hope you guys are really enjoying your week so far. I'm back at it with yet another video, and we're going to take a look at this up-and-coming full moon in the sign of Scorpio. If you guys like my content, you want to see more of it, click the bell button below. This will subscribe you to the channel and give you alerts as to when I have new videos. I'm here every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday, trying to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video, consider sharing on your socials, and leave me a comment and let me know what has been evolving since we had this new moon in Scorpio 6 months ago. What's now kind of unfolding for you in the area of Scorpio in your chart? Lots of suspense, drama, stirring the pot, all that stuff kind of comes up with full moons in Scorpio. So today I'm going to be breaking down what all of the aspects mean, what to be watching for. And if you guys stay tuned to the end of the video, I'll be taking you through the 12 rising signs and giving you guys my thoughts on how this is going to be impacting you. So really going through the shadows with this one, that's something that you guys want to know. When this full moon hits on May the 12th, 2025, we're going to see a full moon at 22 degrees. So if you have any personal planets anywhere around, I would say 20 to about 24 degrees of Scorpio, sun, moon, rising, maybe a node or a personal planet or an angle, this will be impacting you the most. As well as anybody who has anything from 20 to 24 degrees of the fixed signs, as you'll be experiencing a square or an opposition. But yeah, like I said, this one's going to stir the pot a little bit. I think that whenever you're dealing with a Scorpio full moon, there's always this intensity, and it really deals with financial matters, as Scorpio is kind of connected to debts and loans and financial entanglements. It's also about shadow work, really uncovering some deep-seated secrets and things that we've been afraid of kind of dealing with or working through. So I'll give you guys also some ideas of how to kind of work with this full moon as well. So let's start with the basics, right? We have a full moon that happens every single month. This is really a story that ties back to the new moon that we had in 2024 in Scorpio. So we'll actually take a look at that in just a second. But when we see full moons, this is basically a culmination. So this is a point where there is something that's being illuminated in the Scorpio area of our horoscope, and it's also about release. So full moons represent this buildup of emotions or a situation that's been kind of playing out, and then it kind of pops. So this is the peak of the lunar cycle. And this is where obviously during a full moon, emotions run high. So whatever's been simmering beneath the surface is likely going to get lit up by this full moon. Now, Scorpio is a sign that deals with power, right? Its traditional ruler is Mars, its modern day ruler is Pluto, and it's connected to the 8th house. So this is also about the subconscious, and I feel like this full moon is really going to be putting a spotlight on, in many ways, our deepest desires, but also our fears and ultimately truth. So yes, it's intense, it feels raw, and it's asking us to really release what no longer serves us, and it kind of feels to me like a snake that's shedding its skin. That's what we always see during this particular lunation every year. Now, this particular full moon, why is it so special? Well, I think for a number of reasons, the aspects that we're seeing in this full moon, I think are pretty prominent. Probably one of the biggest things that you guys are going to notice right off the bat is the opposition to not just the sun, that's the full moon, but also Uranus. So it's going to have this sudden surprise, plot twist, anything goes type of vibe. Like I said, it's also ruled by Mars and Pluto. So we are finally coming out of the Mars-Pluto opposition that we were experiencing at the end of April. And that's been playing out for some time. It goes back all the way to actually the fall of 2024 when we had the last new moon in Scorpio. So we need to look at both Mars and Pluto with some of these aspects. It's technically by sign, Mars and Pluto are still in opposition. A little too wide to be considered an exact opposition, but some of you guys might still be feeling that during the time of the full moon. And whenever we see oppositions between these two particular planets, it's going to be bringing up themes revolving around power, world power, power when it comes to financial situations, when it comes to leadership. And obviously Mars and Pluto are kind of known for conflict. So we can definitely see a lot of emotional depth. And through some of that pain, some of that frustration, there is an opportunity for a rebirth. We're kind of breaking free. So you guys are going to find that this is a really good full moon for confronting shadows, healing old wounds, and I think really stepping into your personal power. It does not feel comfortable, right? The moon is not comfortable in Scorpio. It is kind of in a sign that is making it go through some really intense purification process emotionally. Scorpio also is a sign that does not do surface level. So if you have like eighth house placements, if you have a Scorpio moon, if you have an eighth house moon, maybe you guys are kind of familiar with some of the Hades aspects, but it does not want to just stay on the surface. It wants to go deep. It wants to uncover everything and really purge and purify anything that's threatening the emotional foundation. So this is a full moon for some of us that can actually feel quite liberating, especially with the oppositions to Uranus. And it's a water sign. So you guys might feel a little bit more extra intuitive, maybe magnetic, and maybe even a little obsessive under this particular full moon. Now I'm expecting secrets to surface. Relationships might hit a turning point. And I think the key here is really about embracing the intensity and using that to be able to kind of channel that power into a new process, right? So this is where the degree theory kind of comes in. It's at 22 degrees. So if you guys use degree theory in your astrology practice or studies, you know that this is connected to Capricorn. So this is really a degree that carries a unique kind of vibe that's going to be about long-standing issues, right? Things that also deal with structure, ambition, mastery. So we're going to be asked, okay, are we mastering, our emotions? Are we learning to move with some of the changes and kind of embrace these changes and not look at endings or conclusions as kind of the end of the world? Because I think some people might kind of see some of the full moon in Scorpio as like the end of the world type of dilemma. I think that it's about choosing not to fuel some of the emotional chaos that might come during the time of the full moon. Being more mature, taking our time, thinking about our long-term goals, not getting rattled with some of the stuff that gets kicked up now, really focusing on where we're going in the future. So, for some of you guys, it might mean that you're channeling this intensity into something that feels more tangible, because 22 can be about being solid, and also something that's a lot more powerful. For many of us, I think it's going to be like the universe saying, take this raw passion and build something with it, build something lasting. So I would expect some of us to feel like this push to master our emotions and take responsibility for our role in the transformation. Now, because it's at 22 degrees, we're going to read the Sabian symbol for 23 degrees of Scorpio, which obviously, if you guys have been following my videos, you know that the Sabian symbols kind of give us a little bit more food for thought on each of the individual degrees in the zodiac. And the Sabian symbol for 23 degrees is a bunny metamorphosized into a fairy. So the keyword is transition. The theme is the magic of imagination. This symbol speaks to creativity, imagination, and personal meanings. The image of a bunny metamorphosized into a fairy suggests enchantment, magic, and transformation of reality through supernatural powers of the mind. Implicit in this symbol is the ability for every individual to enhance his enjoyment of life by changing the way he sees the world in which he lives. At its highest, it represents personal growth and development through power and of positive thinking and creative visualization. Watch for disassociation or escape from reality through unhealthy fantasies or delusions. The accent is on transformation and change. You could be shocked or surprised by something that happens today. Your greatest advantage lies in looking for the highest and best in others. Find the hidden promise in all things and nurture it. Think in terms of possibilities. Guard against preferring bizarre or fantastic explanations over truth you're afraid to face. Confront your fears and deal with them. Stepping stones is transformation, enchantment, magic, trickery, change, conversion, flux, alteration, transmutation. All right, so those are the themes that we're going to be kind of like looking at. I feel like on one hand, it's really about embracing some of the endings, because it's making way for a new kind of transformation, which is what Scorpio is all about. But it's also just like pure magic, right? We think of like a rabbit kind of turning into a fairy. This can be about evolution. It can also be about kind of blending earthly kind of practical things with things that are more magical. Obviously, Scorpio is kind of tied to that, and tapping into our hidden potential. So I think with this full moon, it's about embracing that transformative energy and really unlocking a higher version of ourselves. It's a call to rise above the mundane and connect with our soul's deeper purpose. So when we break down some of the aspects, as you guys know, I always say new and full moons, they're not all created equal. We got to see what's going on with the rulers. We also have to be taking a look at what's going on with the other planets. So this is going to give us a little bit more information in terms of how this is kind of playing out. So like I said, we're really focusing on Mars and Pluto. So we talked a little bit about the previous opposition that's been building. Obviously, we had that one at the end of April. We're going to have No more of these particular oppositions in these signs right now. But if you think back to early January of 2025, around New Year's, we saw Mars-Pluto opposition. We also saw one taking place in the fall. It was right around the beginning of November 2024. So it talks about this cycle of things building up and then popping, right? And unfortunately, we've seen it materialize with a lot of out in the world, combative, confrontational, kind of deadly, dangerous events, right? Especially people in crowds, things involving cars, stuff connecting to heat. So perhaps maybe now that the full moon is kind of coming through, it's starting to show us, okay, why are these things happening? What is fueling this? Why are people angry? And also it could be big about exposure revolving around crime and things that have been kind of going on in recent months, because Scorpio is going to be about that. Anyway, that's fading. The other thing that I was looking at was the Mars-Venus trine. So we're going to see this kind of set up kind of the third week of May, more so into the end of the month, but it's starting to build at the time of the full moon. Venus in Aries obviously is very much about being bold and independent and going after what you want. Mars in Leo is about being very creative. It's about being very heart-centered, and it's very bold. So seeing this trine that's taking place during the full moon, where you've got the star-crossed lovers, Mars and Venus, trining one another, I think is definitely helping soften some of the Mars-Pluto kind of edges. This can create a very passionate energy at the time of the full moon, and it can be a really great creative combo, great for self-expression, romance. Just watch for some of the ego clashes that are still kind of setting up. Now, Pluto, on the other hand, which is the modern day ruler of Scorpio, it is now retrograde at the time of this full moon. So I know some of you guys are watching this like at the end of April. We will not see Pluto go retrograde until around the 4th of May. I did a video on that if you guys haven't seen it. But it is going to be retrograde in Aquarius at the time of the full moon. So it does kind of bring up this internal reflection. What are we thinking about? What do we want to say? What are we learning? What information or news or changes is kind of happening? And how we're kind of reflecting on some of these, powerful shifts that are taking place also with the collective Aquarius, right? With other people. I think that this can be really urging us to rethink power dynamics and collective ideas. Where are we going in the future, right? We need to have more truth. We need to have more disclosure. We need to be aware of what's going on in the shadows for people to be able to, I think, be better informed and also know exactly where some of this tension and stress is kind of coming from in the world. So we're not at war with one another. Now we've got Mercury that is in Taurus, and it is in an almost exact square to Pluto. That's pretty significant. The fact that Mercury, is squaring Pluto does make me feel like this is going to be a full moon that is about disclosure. It is probably going to be, newspapers, media, anything in regards to journalism, some kind of jaw-dropping, damning information that's going to be emerging. The square is not friendly. It does represent some kind of tension. So, watching Mercury kind of square Pluto, it means that communication is going to be very intense under this full moon. We might feel that there's an intense conversation that comes up. We receive an email that really kind of ticks us off. We have a back and forth with somebody. And obviously, we're going to see lots of stubborn debates that will be coming up because Mercury is the mind and Pluto is going to be about power. So what are the debates going to be about? Money. Mercury in the sign of Taurus is going to be about the bond market. It's going to be about also physical materials. It's going to be about banking in general. I think it's going to be about damning information connecting to security with banks. And I think that there's going to be a lot of heated debates revolving around what actually is valuable. Now, in our world, it means that we could have some intense kind of exchanges with other people about, well, what are we paying for versus what are we getting? What do we owe? How much money are we making? What are things kind of costing? You can see that play out in individual one-on-one relationships, but also within friendships and networks. So we're going to see a lot of people online debating and kind of talking about the future of money and how we can kind of focus on security because, password security, banking security, all of that stuff is definitely going to be a theme. So watch for some of that kind of coming up in the world at the time of the full moon and be mindful of your words because they're definitely going to kind of, they'll carry some kind of weight, which can definitely bring about some strife. Anyway, Moon is going to be making a trine to the North Node in Pisces as well as Saturn. And that means that the sun and Uranus are also sextiling. So we're seeing some interesting aspects to the nodes of fate. So basically, the North Node is about the direction of where we're going collectively. It usually represents something we do not know, we have not experienced, we need to immerse ourselves in, and it can be kind of confusing. And then when we see aspects to the South Node, like a sextile, and also we see trines, it is about kind of clearing things out. So we're both dealing with the past as well as the future. And whenever you're looking at lunar transits, we have to look at the nodes, because if the moon is making aspects to the nodes, it's going to be saying, hey, there's something kind of fateful happening. So nice, easy trines and sextiles, I think, help us move through some of these changes of kind of untangling the past and getting on the path to the future a little bit more easily. But still, it's happening in water aspects. So it's going to be highly emotional. So we're going to see the moon trine the North Node in Saturn and Pisces. I think in one way, it's very intuitive. It can be also very emotional. There's lots of room for emotional breakthroughs and kind of aligning better with people emotionally, especially when it comes to our destiny and the lessons that come from being transparent, being vulnerable, being raw. On the other hand, the Sun-Uranus sextile to Saturn and the North Node is really about kind of sparking innovation. I think there's going to be opportunities for us to kind of figure out how we can kind of stabilize, how we can become more secure. After all, Saturn is going to be about boundaries. So it's going to be about boundaries, limits. In the sign of Pisces, it can mean, what's going on with immigration stuff, what's going on also with organized religion, churches, prisons, hospitals, that kind of stuff. So we might be hearing more news about some of that. We may also be hearing more about the Saturn North Node conjunction, where it's like talking more about shortages and whether or not some of the shortages that we're seeing that's impacting the markets or, consumerism or what we're able to, have available, whether or not that's something that's real, right? Are we seeing things that are real shortages? Or are we seeing things that are being manufactured or certain markets that are being kind of affected intentionally to create fear or to create more income? People could be making a lot more money off of some of this like scarcity mindset. Anyway, I think with the moon opposing the sun in Uranus, and you'll see actually the sun come into conjunction with Uranus a couple days later, several hours after the full moon, you're going to see the moon actually oppose Uranus at a 26. I'm expecting some really big money news. I think it's going to be about the future of banking in particular. And it's been interesting to watch some of the transits over the last several weeks with Venus retrograde, Mercury retrograde. And suddenly now we're starting to see that banks are on board with kind of helping people with purchasing and holding and transacting in cryptocurrencies. Uranus and Taurus is literally about innovation with money. It can be talking about where banks are needing to innovate. And I think that a lot of it is going to be tied to this. We might also be hearing more about taxes, jobs as well, job numbers. Certainly with the moon sextile, the South Node, we could be kind of hearing some truth revolving around job numbers, performances. We can be hearing a lot more also about changes that's going on with inflation. And we can be hearing a lot about changes that's going on in Virgo type jobs. So it can mean where there's more layoffs, but it can also mean where there's going to be disclosure that's coming out about health and wellness, the medical industry, anything kind of connected to doctors, nurses, people who also are in uniform. And I'm curious to see what the shock and surprise is going to be later in the day, because I feel like when that moon comes into an opposition with Uranus, so I'm Central Time, so when we have the full moon, it's going to be exact around noon Central Time. So that means it's going to be around 10 a.m. ish on the Pacific coast, and it's going to be around 1 p.m. on the Eastern coast. But several hours later, the moon will oppose Uranus, and this is where that full moon is going to start to kind of kick. So that's going to be closer in the evening hours, closer to 8 p.m. Central. And that's at a Taurus degree, okay, 26, and then Uranus is going to hit 27, and then the moon is going to hit 27. So it's going to be, I think, financial and banking news, some kind of big shift that's going to be happening then. Interesting that when the moon is making the opposition, this is all connected to Venus, and Venus is now hitting that solar eclipse degree. It's coming into conjunction with where we had the eclipse. It's getting ready to come out of shadow. And I think this is going to be about individuals having more insight when it comes to the future financial landscape. So whether that's like investing, the future of money, banking, what's valuable, and people probably having a very different opinion about how they should be investing or kind of allocating some of their funds. And then finally, that moon in opposition to, I think, Sun and Uranus, surprises, tension between security and change. Taurus is always about kind of feeling safe and secure. It wants to kind of get comfortable, have all of its resources and feel solid, and also be really focused on personal security and pleasure. Versus that Scorpio moon that does not know how to have those things. It has to go through this intense emotional kind of purification process. It has to deal with, endings and beginnings. And thankfully, I think the trines to Saturn as well as the North Node is reminding us that some things actually have to go. We have to release some of this stuff. So work with water. That can be really helpful, whether you're, doing baths or you're cleansing stuff, or, maybe you're washing the floors or you're doing a detox. That can be really beneficial to help move through some of the watery aspects that are going to come up with this moon. And then finally, one of the other aspects that I also noted that's going to be pretty prominent is you are going to see Jupiter square the North and South Node. It is starting to come into a square with Saturn as well, but I'm going to do a video on this because from an evolutionary kind of perspective, I think this is going to be a really important time in May. Jupiter, when it squares the North and the South Node, is making its energy felt like immensely. Jupiter makes things bigger. So with Jupiter square, it's amplifying ideas, right? Communication, media, travel, news, but also it's really about kind of saying, okay, is there too much information? Are we hearing two different stories? Are we hearing two different sides of media? Is there going to be a major emphasis on Gemini things? Cars, travel, right? Communications, language. And also, I think just the mind is going to be kind of feeling like, which direction are we going in? It's almost like too much at one time. The challenge here, because Jupiter is in a sign it doesn't perform well in, is that it's really challenging us to stay focused. Even the full moon is going to in conjunct or quincunx Jupiter. So this is like a cosmic cocktail of intensity and growth. And in order for us to be better informed, to be more knowledgeable, Jupiter and Gemini, we need to have all the facts, all the numbers, all the details, all of that stuff. And that's, I think, what's going to be kind of coming out through the full moon, which is featuring the Mercury square Pluto. So we are going to have to be asking some hard or difficult questions. Now let's look at the new moon where all of this was seated, because this tells a story. Oh, you know what? I'm seeing one other thing, which I didn't even have in my notes, but my OCD mind is going to have to bring it up. Look at the quincunx that it's making to Chiron. Let's see. So it's going to be at 22. There we go. Look at the quincunx that it's making to Chiron. Moon in conjunct Chiron, where there's personal wounding and healing issues that are coming up, individual issues, where maybe our emotions are playing a role in some health-related issues that we're having. Obviously, Chiron and Aries is like inflammation of the face, migraines, headaches, bumping our head, burns, scrapes, abrasions, allergies, all that stuff. So it's quincunx Chiron. And you guys have heard me talk about, I feel like emotions are the root cause of a lot of like health and illness related things that we have. But that sextile to the South Node, where we're clearing out old, outdated ways of working or being, this creates a yod to Chiron. Exactly. So this is a really good full moon for like doing an emotional detox. Like sit down and write it all out, get all the emotions out, cry it out, do whatever you have to do, but don't hold it in. And I think that some of us are going to become more aware of where like negative or toxic emotional patterns are actually doing us a disservice. All right, so let's go back now. Let's look at the new moon that we had 6 months ago. And this is how you guys want to use astrology in action. You want to always look at a new moon, and then 6 months down the road, it'll materialize and turn into what will be a full moon. And usually the new moons will kind of talk about what's going to happen during the full moon, because the new moon is where we planted a seed. So if you guys remember this new moon, it was on November 1st, 2024. This was a new moon in Scorpio that was at 9 degrees. So it was ripe with the opportunity to be optimistic about change. Nines always deal with Sag. It's Jupiter. It's about travel, law, expansion, knowledge, all that stuff. And when we had the new moon, it was in a trine to Saturn. So it was also implying, hey, you know what, in order to, have these new beginnings, we have to be willing to reflect. We have to rest. We have to sleep. We also have to uncover, where we're self-sabotaging or where we need to get out of our own way. And this new moon featured the Mars-Pluto opposition. Interesting that 6 months later, right, we've had, now 2 more of those oppositions, and then the full moon in Scorpio in 2025 features Mars and Pluto starting to come out of separation. So it's still kind of baked into the chart both ways. The fact that Mars was in Cancer and it was, at 29 degrees was peak of crisis with housing situations around the world. But I'm an American, so I can just speak from the fires that were happening in California, flood victims that were in the South that were, living in tents out in the cold. Major issues revolving around, homeland security matters, lots of tension that was brewing prior to the US election. Lots of people were just kind of fit to be tied, and they were not seeing eye to eye. And we felt like a nation that was kind of divided. We also saw an uptick in, from November on in lots of crimes that were kind of going on. And whether this was people noticing that there was like an uptick in crime in their local communities, or we were seeing that there was more kind of mass casualty events and things taking place, that was also baked into it. And you guys know that 29 degrees represents a critical tipping point. So where there was tension, especially with the North Node being ruled by Mars at this time, emotionally, where as we were coming into Mars pre-shadow for the retrograde, we had to go and kind of reassess and reevaluate the past. Home and family matters, ancestral issues, home security issues, people also having some tension maybe going on domestically, and where people were feeling like under pressure because of some of the changes that were going to be kind of going on with like leadership in the world. Just speaking from an American's perspective, obviously, going into the beginning of November, being like, okay, we're going to see what's going to happen with this election. And regardless of who wins, I feel like there is definitely going to be a lot of like unhappy people because there's just been such a split in terms of the perspective of the politics. When I think if you take a step back and if you really look at it, it's kind of like, without getting political, I really kind of feel like there's a lot of similarities on both sides. And as soon as we start to kind of buy into the I'm in this camp or I'm in that camp, we become more polarized. And we start to actually see that throughout history, we've seen a lot of flip-flopping that's kind of happened with both parties, where maybe 100 years ago, one party was really gung-ho for one kind of belief system. Now we're seeing it's a complete opposite. So the polarity in itself of the Mars and the Pluto was kind of talking about the fact that we were getting ready to see a dramatic shift that was going to be happening in the world, that because there was a shift in power going on, it was also going to affect Mars and Cancer things. Families were going to squabble, people were going to move. You were also going to see that there was going to be huge changes revolving around immigration. I think a lot of that was kind of connected to the trines to Saturn as well as Mars trine Neptune, where we were kind of reevaluating and reassessing, people kind of coming and going from specific countries. So once again, I try to stay neutral. I'm like Switzerland, but I think that we don't want to get too sucked into the polarity aspect. And I hope that you guys have been kind of seeing that, because when we go to one extreme, it's going to be really hard to be able to meet in the middle. And when we have some of this conflict that's going on with the Mars-Pluto oppositions, we're not able to sit down and have a conversation and be able to kind of find ways to negotiate and find ways to mediate. It becomes extremely polarizing. So that has been the last 6 months. All right, great. Now we're in the full moon. So the full moon is saying, okay, there's going to still be some Mars-Pluto things. There's going to still be some Saturn things. There's going to still be some Neptune things. And there are. All of those aspects are featured directly, going a little too far, directly in this full moon. You see all of the same aspects. Mars coming into opposition with Pluto, or I guess the opposition is fading. Moon trine Saturn. We've also got some trines to the North Node. And all of the aspects are kind of saying the same thing. So now it's like 6 months later, there is this reassessment of power and those who are in control, 22 degrees. Okay, now where do we stand? Are things economically actually getting better? Are we starting to see strengthening revolving around security? And also, I think the 3-letter agencies, I think that's going to be a lot of this. Scorpio deals with like the FBI and anything kind of connected with some of the private agencies, at least, in the world. So I'm curious to see what happens. I'm curious to see if this is about passing some kind of test and whether or not there is going to be positive manifestation of like economic changes and growth, because I think that's what a lot of people are waiting to kind of see. But in order to really get the big picture, we need to have the truth that's kind of being exposed about some of the future plans when it comes to Taurus related things. So when it comes to banking, but also securities, when it comes to the bond market, when it comes to agriculture, food, resources, because I do think a lot of this has been about how, especially food prices and things that are connected to what we're buying and kind of consuming has been directly impacted and affected. Are we in better standings now as we come into this full moon? And is there going to be like less fear and worry about whether or not there is going to be enough? Now, best ways to work with this full moon, right? Number one is just lean into the intensity. It's going to be, about a couple days that you guys are going to feel this. You don't want to shy away from it, because I think with Scorpio, the power is facing some of the issues that kind of come up. Maybe you're going to be journaling about what's been kind of coming up for you subconsciously. You can meditate on, issues where you have felt disempowered, and you can visualize feeling empowered. We can also really focus on releasing old baggage. So cord cutting rituals, cleansing and purification baths can be really beneficial. Scorpio is associated with water. So maybe you're throwing some salt in a bath. Maybe you're just deciding that you need some more grounding energy. So you're going to carry some obsidian with you. All of these things can be really beneficial. With Scorpio full moons, I always like to light a black candle just to kind of symbolize and represent like things that I am kind of like doing away with and things that I'm purging. These are days that I also like to do a detox, or I like to do a cleanse. I like to go and pick a closet or something that I have been meaning to kind of like dig out and go through and like organize, or I'll donate stuff, or I'll recycle things, because that's a good use of the energy as well. So if you guys want to pick up a black or a red candle, both of these colors correlate with Scorpio, Mars, as well as Pluto. And you can sit down and set intentions revolving around what it is that you want to transform. Shadow work, as well as deep intimacy, can also align with Scorpio's more kind of sensual energies. So if that's your vibe, you can choose to focus on that as well. Just whatever it is, it's about letting go and stepping into your personal strength. So I'd like to talk to you guys a little bit about where this full moon is going to be taking place in your natal charts. As a reminder, I'm a Western astrologer, so I'm going to be focusing on this from the perspective of the whole sign, rising sign system. So if you guys don't know your birth chart, you can go to astro.com. You can plug in your details, time, date of birth, and location. Look at the 9 o'clock hour. That's your rising or your ascendant sign, and that's what you're going to want to listen to. If you already know your chart, make sure you don't have any planets around the, 20 to 24 degrees. If you do, it's going to be a little bit more action-packed for you. And we're going to take a look at all of the rising signs now. So I'm going to be giving you guys lots of themes. I'm going to talk about some predictions and also some tips. And of course, I will be giving you guys a tarot card for this lunation as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. I'm going to be starting, as always, with my Aries and Aries risings. So what's up, Aries? How's it going? You're going to be doing this full moon in Scorpio. It's going to be taking place in your natal 8th house. So a lot of what I said probably correlates and you kind of relate to. It's been interesting to watch the Mars-Pluto opposition play out for you over the last couple of months, as it's been very personal, both with reassessing your past, your family, your home. And now you're coming out of Mars, which has just opposed in your 5th and in your 11th house. So the question is, have you figured out what makes you happy yet? Have you figured out what you truly love? Have you figured out what's going to bring you the most joy? These are things that I would be thinking about. Now, the full moon is going to be happening in your 8th house. So this is like the shadow house. It's harder to kind of see things here. The 8th house deals with themes kind of connected to joint finances. So think like taxes, loans, inheritance, investments, partners' money, intimacy as well. And it can also be a house that deals with deep psychological transformation, healing, therapy, working through trauma. And this is a house that is associated with death. Now, this does not mean that you're going to experience a death. Maybe there's an ego death going on with all the transits in Aries. Maybe there's been a recent change that's been going on with a friendship. Maybe you have been dealing with intimacy issues and healing childhood wounds. Any of these things can be kind of playing out. But generally, a full moon like this is pretty financial. So there can be major financial things going on, a big money change happening for a partner. Maybe you get a big check. Maybe you have to make a big payment for something. And I predict that for you guys, a breakthrough in money or relationships can really shift your perspective. My tip here for you guys would be to release control. Trust your instincts on this one. I really feel like Especially with Neptune in your sign now, a lot of you guys are becoming a little bit more in tune with what your guide is telling you, and you might feel like there is some significant change on the horizon, or maybe you're still kind of working through some of the changes that have been happening. But I feel like this can be very therapeutic and very healing with some of the trines to Saturn as well as the North Node. It can mean that you're just accepting that you kind of have hit the end of a wall with a situation. So emotionally, you're letting go of something. Maybe there's a big change going on in your career. Maybe there is some kind of ending that's making way for a new beginning. All right, so let's see what the tarot says for you guys. You get the Ace of Swords. Truth be told, this is the true death card. Okay, any tarot reader will tell you this. I don't read reversals on the channel. But Ace of Swords reverse is the true death card in astrology. So the fact that this in tarot, the fact that this is coming up, I think is kind of saying there's probably going to be a conversation. There's going to be a discussion that's going to be about the future of your finances or your security. Could be a meeting that you have at work. This could be also a conversation you have with a financial advisor. It might be an email that you receive that's about negotiating, a settlement or a contract. It might mean you receive also a letter or something that's connected to taxes. But this can also mean that you're vocalizing and finally communicating, okay, enough is enough. This is done. This is not moving forward any longer. I'm ready for a change. I'm going to cut this loose. I'm going to let it go. Good luck, Aries. Let me know what happens with that one. All right, we got Taurus and Taurus rising. What's up, Taurus? If you're a Taurus rising, sun, moon, 20 to 24 degrees, this is going to be pretty personal for you because it's going to be opposing not only the sun, but also Uranus that's in your sign. So pay attention to that. The full moon will be in Scorpio in your natal 7th house. So this is obviously where you look at the themes of partnerships. This is one-on-one connection. So clients, spouses, business partners. This could also mean that this is your marketplace, something that you're selling or that you're kind of putting out there. Now, when you have this full moon, obviously something that really kind of caught my eye for you guys is the positive is that Venus and Mars are in harmony with each other. So even if there is some big relationship stuff going on, a big decision in a relationship, maybe you're deciding, okay, it's time to level up or go our separate ways. You can work well with another person. Mars and Venus in a trine is saying that it's going to be about putting your emotions into action. So what is it that you want to change? Do you want to move? Do you want to have more passion in your relationships? Do you want to talk about the future, where you're going with your family or your living situation? Do you want to talk to somebody about how you're feeling? It's all going to kind of come out in the open when you have a full moon in the 7th house. But I think that it can actually be very rewarding for some of you guys. Where it gets a little tricky is Mercury in your sign is squaring Pluto. And this means that there can definitely be a bit of a meeting of the minds that you're having with somebody publicly. So a back and forth you're having with an employer, right? A back and forth that you're having with somebody publicly that it becomes like a little scandalous. So be careful of communication and people kind of trying to cut you down with words. There could also be a bit of a blow up maybe that you can have with another person, especially if it's somebody work related or somebody that you work with. Where there can be some, intense exchanges that are happening there. The full moon also in opposition to Sun and Uranus in your sign tells me that you're kind of feeling the whole week of the full moon that you're nobody's going to tell me what to do. Do not tell me what to do. You're not the boss of me. So you can be feeling a little bit more temperamental when you're dealing with other people. I predict, though, that a relationship is going to reach a climax. I think that's what's going to happen here. And it can deepen or you can decide to let it go. Now, if you communicate honestly, even if it's uncomfortable, that's the way that you're going to kind of move through this. Maybe you're feeling like you're outgrowing a professional connection. Maybe it's time to tell somebody how you feel. Just watch your words and be mindful that the 7th house can be somebody who can be helping you and working with you. So think therapists, astrologers, people who can kind of give you guidance. These can be the people that can step in also to help you navigate some of these more challenging personal or professional kind of changes that are taking place. The card that you get is the Page of Cups. This is a relationship card. So this can be saying for some of you, Taurus and Taurus risings, that there is a new relationship coming in. There is a renewal of the relationship. It's more romantic. It's better connected. There is a sense of kind of feeling like you're getting wined and dined. Maybe you're meeting somebody new. So watch for a Scorpio, or it can be a Cancer or a Pisces. This can also be talking about, if you're in a relationship, that there can be discussions revolving around where you're going in the future. Are you guys talking about furthering commitment? Are you talking about having a kid? pages can sometimes be connected to having children. So it might mean that there is like a big dynamic change that's happening for a partner in your life. Good luck. All right, we got Gemini and Gemini rising. What's up, Gemini? You guys are doing this full moon in Scorpio in your natal 6th house. And as you know, the 6th house is going to deal with themes relating to your work. It can also be your health and your daily routines, your coworkers, your pets, all of that stuff. So Gemini, I think that I would review what's been happening since the fall of last year. Were you trying to change jobs? Were you trying to get into a new industry? Have you been going back to the gym? Have you been eating differently? Have you been focusing on your habits and your wellness and your routine, right? Likely now you see the results or the conclusions of some of these things. At the time of the full moon, we're going to see that Mars and Pluto are still they're separating, but they're in opposition to each other. So that tells me that maybe there's been some tension revolving around moving, communication, maybe traveling, and now you're trying to kind of like finalize and kind of settle up your schedule, right? So for some of you guys, it can mean that, you're making more time for, some of the things that you enjoy the most, the 3rd and the 9th house things. It can also mean that there's a new job that's coming in. It can also mean that there's like a major change to your health or your habits. Keep in mind that your ruler, Mercury, is in your 12th house. So it's going to be more about resting, reflecting, maybe a little bit more intuitive, maybe significant dreams that are kind of going on. Mercury is in a square to Pluto. So it does mean that your beliefs about the world gets tested. It does mean that there can be a little bit of stress or anxiety about whether or not you're going to swing your work schedule as well as, an education goal or maybe even a trip. So there is some tension that can be manifesting as like, whoa, I'm feeling kind of burnt out and I need to heal something. So putting it all together, it is possible with this full moon that either a hidden issue at work or a hidden health issue may potentially come to light. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be some kind of crisis, but I do think that it might be kind of showing you where you need to be purging old habits and really prioritizing your self-care during this full moon. The card that I got for you is the 7 of Wands. This is about kind of, being able to stand your ground, being able to be like, hey, I can manage it. Like I'm doing my best to be able to kind of fight off whatever's going on. So if you have felt like there is a brewing issue at work that you need to deal with, or have you felt like you've been putting off dealing with going to the doctor or, like dealing with a health issue, you can overcome it. Your will is very strong when it comes to the 7 of Wands and you're not willing to back down. I do think that the Mercury-Pluto themes can be also about where it's mind over matter and you're not allowing yourself to go down like this kind of doom spiral of like worrying about things falling apart. So remind yourself that, take a couple deep breaths, maybe do some visualization or meditation or breath work kind of practices when the full moon kind of comes through. So that way you're not feeling like anything that's going on mentally is kind of impacting you physically. Okay? Good luck. We've got Cancer and Cancer rising. You guys are going to be experiencing a full moon in Scorpio taking place in your natal 5th house, and it's in a fellow water sign. So if you have anything 20 to 24 degrees of Cancer, sun, moon, or rising, you're going to experience a trine during the time of the full moon. I love full moons in the 5th house. I feel like, obviously, because you're ruled by the moon, you're a little bit more impacted by full and new moons. But the 5th house is really about creativity. This is about your personal projects, your joy, can be about romance, dating, meeting somebody, but also creativity. So when you have a full moon here, it is kind of saying there is some kind of conclusion or completion of something. So you want to think about what you've been kind of working on, how you can bring in more joy, over the last 6 months. Obviously, Mars and Pluto are in opposition to one another and they're separating. So it's kind of saying that maybe there's been a reassessment of, what you're investing your time or your energy into. Maybe you've been thinking about side projects or side hustles or new ways of being able to make money. Also, something else that you're going to see during this full moon is that there are some really nice kind of trines happening to your 10th house. So for some of you guys, it could mean that there's a new job that's emerging, you have a new role, you can be creative with that role, you might enjoy it a little bit more. And the 5th house can also be really significant for children. So if you have children, big things happening with your kids. If you do not have children and you're thinking about having children, usually full moons can be an indicator in the 5th house that there is an impending pregnancy. I also say that because it's Quincunx Jupiter, which is about to come into your sign. So we're going to see in 2025 a bit of a baby boom for Cancer and Cancer risings as Jupiter kind of crosses your ascendant. So it is possible that that can be coming in for some of you guys. I would just say, watch for passion. Fifth house is about passion, and it's about igniting that passion. For some of you guys, it feel like a fling, or it could be a new creative spark. I would really just say let your inner child play, but be mindful that there may be a need to kind of set some boundaries. Obviously, the fifth house is what you kind of create and fall in love with, and it's about you sharing something with other people. So you might be like, look at this picture of my kid, or look at this project that I'm launching, or it could mean that you're wanting to kind of introduce somebody that you've been kind of dating to your friends. And for the most part, I think it's going to be a little bit more friendly for you, Cancers, especially with some of the trines to your sign, as well as the trines that we're seeing to the North Node and Saturn in Pisces in your ninth. So having fun traveling, having fun learning something, maybe you're going to be focusing on promoting or advertising something that you've been building or creating. All right, the card that I get for you guys is the Justice card. So this is a card that does deal with relationships. This is about karma, balance, and also attraction. So it is possible that some of you guys are meeting somebody that really kind of like sets your heart on fire, and you're like, what is this? The Justice card can also be talking about bringing in people that are going to be an adequate match, somebody who is going to be balancing you out. Maybe that has to do with the fact that the moon rules you and it's trining Saturn in the ninth, and Saturn rules relationships. So some Cancer and Cancer risings might be finding that a relationship with somebody at a distance is setting up. You meet somebody, they live in another state, right? Or you're traveling, you meet somebody. It can mean that absence or kind of separation or distance makes the heart grow fonder. It can also be about a relationship that you have with a teacher, a guru, a mentor, or somebody who is kind of guiding you in legal situations as well. Good luck, Cancer. We've got Leo and Leo rising. You guys are going to be doing this full moon in Scorpio in your natal fourth house. All right, Leo, well, this is a bit intense for you because there are planets that are in each and every one of the fixed signs. So all the fixed signs are going to definitely feel this because they're all going to be kind of highlighted. But I would say you want to think about what's been happening really over the last 6 months. If you go back to the end of 2024, what goals or seeds were you planting revolving around your emotions, your home life, your family, your living situation? Now that's kind of coming full circle under this full moon. That's about home, family, property, and roots. Now, in recent months, Mars and Pluto have been in opposition to each other, which basically means that you have been at odds with someone or something. I don't know if it's been a partner, if it's been a business partner, if it's been a relationship, if it's been, having to walk away from someone or something. But now that's over with, but it still gets brought up at the time of this full moon. Obviously, the sun rules you. So there's a lot of focus on, well, what's going on with my work and my career? And where do I need to be out in the world? And, that is being kind of challenged, where you're being asked to come back home and focus on something on the home front. With the sun approaching a conjunction to Uranus, it's very likely you're going to see a pretty significant status change. Could be a relationship shift, committing or separating. It could also be some big breakthroughs that you're having with your career. So obviously that can impact you emotionally, moving the fourth house. It can also be about how these changes are actually impacting your home or your family. So for you guys, I really feel like there's huge emotional shifts that are happening at home, and it might feel like it's demanding your attention. Create a sacred space that you can recharge. Some of you guys might be signing leases, buying houses, finishing renovations, moving, or going back home to visit your family. But it does feel like it's a little stressful, and it's squaring Mars in your sign, where you're like, okay, there are things that I want to be doing, but I have to be here for a family or home situation. There's also tension going on in a relationship and me having to be on at work. So take a couple of deep breaths. Know that it's okay to be a little bit more focused on what's going on emotionally or with the home and the family during this full moon. Everything else can wait. The card that you get is the Six of Swords. This might be indicating that some of you guys are getting ready to move, travel, or maybe you're looking for a new home base. All right. So Six of Swords is about moving on from a chaotic situation to something that's calmer. Maybe you're a Leo or a Leo rising that's been dealing with a lot of chaos going on with your home or your family situation, maybe roommates for the last 6 months. Now you're going to be feeling like this is finally calming down, and I feel like you're going to have some stability and that things can actually start to feel a little bit more solid. Maybe these changes have been really difficult. Maybe it's been very emotionally trying, but you're going to start to see the light at the end of the tunnel and realize that whatever you've been hoping to kind of achieve on the home front, now it's actually coming full circle. Good luck, Leo. We've got Virgo and Virgo rising. You guys are going to do this full moon in Scorpio in your natal third house. I hope you guys enjoy this moon, especially because it's it's an aspect to the South Node in your sign. So there's definitely an opportunity to kind of release and clear something, even if it is kind of like more mental related. The third house is obviously about communication. It can be about learning. It can be about short distance trips, things like websites, social media, podcasts. It can also be connecting to movement, siblings, and neighbors. It's kind of like it's a junk drawer of astrology, is what I always call it. But the full moon in the third house can also be important conversations, contracts, negotiations, things like that are happening. So obviously Mars and Pluto are really important as they rule that. And you've seen Mars and Pluto opposing the last several months. And to me, it looks like there's been some issues where you've either been healing or retreating, or you've been dealing with some like internal frustration. And a lot of it looks like it's either impacting you in your habits in your day to day, or maybe it's impacting where you're working, how you're working, the people you're working with, right? And also your health. So the 6th and the 12th house definitely deal with like health and wellness, both from like a spiritual as well as like a physical kind of standpoint. What's helpful is that the moon, like I said, it sextiles your sign. So not only is it sextiling the South Node where you can have like a complete emotional clearing or a conversation where you clear the air, but it's also sextiling your sun, moon, or rising. So it's friendly. It's also going to be coming into some trines with Saturn in your relationship house, which can really improve communication with relationships. So that's like a therapist, an astrologer, a spouse, a business partner, clients. So I like full moons here, personally, where there can be a conversation where the truth is revealed. There can be an email that's got all the details and the information that you need. Somehow words really kind of carry weight during this particular lunation. Obviously, you're ruled by Mercury. And so something to think about is that Mercury is squaring Pluto. So there's like a lot of having to work through some tension in how you're communicating with people at work, or how you're communicating with people from a legal perspective, because Mercury's in the 9th house of legality. It's scoring stuff in the 6th house, which could mean you're having to go through HR. Maybe you're thinking about having to talk to a lawyer about a health issue or a travel issue or an education matter. Maybe it means that there's some tension and you need to blow off some steam, and you're like, you know what, maybe it is about me taking some time to kind of travel a little bit. After all, the full moon in the 3rd house can be a short distance trip, and it's opposing Mercury, which is in your 9th. So it can be good to kind of get a break from your daily routine, just to kind of like smooth out some of the tension that's been kind of happening in the 6th house recently. I would advise you guys to speak from the heart, not just from the mind. Be open to deeper levels of commitment and communication with other people, and also vulnerability. I think that that's like a huge theme with some of the trines to Saturn in your 7th house. The card that you get is the Fool card. So I do think some of you guys might have a little bit of like the itch to travel. This is also about saying like, let's try something different. Let's try something new. So you might be kind of communicating with people in a different way, right? The Fool is about taking chances, embracing the unknown. It is connected to Uranus, where we do see an opposition happening at the time of the full moon. So you might say, you know what, it's time to break with my old schedule. Let's kind of break routine. Let's do something different. Let's travel somewhere we haven't been before. Let's maybe try to work in a different fashion, a different schedule, or even remotely. And this is about taking chances and finding new ways to better communicate. But first, in order to do that, you have to come to terms with what's not been working, where you guys haven't been having the best communication, either in a relationship or at work. Then you can start to proceed forward and then embrace new ways of being able to kind of connect. Okay? Good luck, Virgos. All right, we've got Libras and Libra risings. What's up, Libra? How are you doing? You're going to be doing this full moon in Scorpio in your natal 2nd house. And so for you and Aries, these are very financial houses to have this full moon in. So it can be a lot of money stuff that's coming up, as the 2nd house deals with your personal spending power. So large sums of money coming in, purchases that you're making, things that you're having to pay off. These kind of topics come up during a full moon here. Now, at the time of the full moon, we're going to be seeing that the rulers, Mars and Pluto, are kind of in opposition to each other. It's separating. So there's definitely been some major changes revolving around matters of the heart, how you create your personal joy, maybe changes going on with dating or with a personal business or with children versus other people. So maybe you've kind of felt like there's been some tension revolving around what you want versus what other people want. That is baked into this full moon. And it can mean that you're kind of feeling like you want to create in a different way. And maybe that incentivizes you to, be more mindful of what you're, sharing with your friends, what networking you're doing, what groups you're belonging to. But it could also mean that your goals revolving around finances are changing in some way. Now, at the time of the full moon, you're also seeing All these planets kind of going through your 8th house, which can be about investments, inheritances, stock related things, taxes, partners, money. So it is possible that, that plays into something that you ultimately end up gaining. Libra risings having Scorpio in the second means that you always kind of make money through other people or through some kind of, loss or an inheritance or something that you merge with another person, you end up making something. So watch for money stuff. This is also big for self-worth as well as value changes. And I predict for some of you guys, a financial or confidence boost is very possible. It's very likely. I would be investing in what aligns with your soul and lean into the fact that you do have Venus in your 7th house, which is trining Mars. So it does mean that you can be joining groups and associations and making friends or connecting with networks with people who are also going to be talking about investment themes. And it's not limited to just money. It could mean investing your time, what you're doing creatively, new hobbies. Those things can kind of come up as well. And I feel like you might be spending a little bit more money on like social gatherings or social outings, okay? So the card that you get is the Hermit card, which is interesting because this deals with Virgo, where the South Node is moving through your 12th house. And the South Node ruler, Mercury, is in square to Pluto. So there is some important conversations that are likely going to be coming up, Libra, about what you value and what your investment strategy is or what you're needing for security. Or maybe it's just about kind of having in-depth conversations about what's been on your mind where there's been some tension. Virgo and its association with the Hermit card is really about kind of looking within and trying to figure out what you already know or what you can fix or what you can kind of perfect for yourself. So it might mean that, you're wanting to strengthen your finances. You want to make investments. You want to make more money. So you're talking to somebody else about this process and any insecurities or fears that you've had or blockages revolving around wealth is coming up. And now you're kind of figuring out a way to better deal with it. Hopefully that's helpful. Libra, let me know what happens. And we've got Scorpio and Scorpio risings. This is your once a year full moon. So if you have anything 20 to 24 degrees, Scorpio, pay attention. This is a big one for you. You're having a full moon in your sign. And if you're a Scorpio rising, it's going to be in your 1st house. So obviously the themes are tied to identity, right? Self, your appearance, your personal power, anything also kind of connected to you, what you want. So you want to think back to what happened in the fall of last year. What seeds were you planting, right? What were you thinking about? Back then you had Pluto in your 3rd house of the mind opposing Mars in your 9th house of the higher mind and education. So likely a lot of Scorpios were either thinking about going back to school, going through a training program, trying to get a certification. There was some kind of pressured situation revolving around learning, communication, maybe even travel. And now that's over, but you have still been kind of playing out the Mars-Pluto opposition trauma dramas in your 3rd and your 4th, where there's a lot of change on the home front and emotionally, and like this push to really give it your all at work. Well, that's fading now, but I think some of the other aspects that are kind of playing out with the squares that are happening, obviously, by sign to Pluto, it's very wide. The oppositions to planets in your 7th house, relationships, and Mercury, which is in a square to Pluto, tells me that you might be a little bit more emotional than usual. You might be wearing your heart on your sleeve here. And this can be positive, especially with some of the trines to Saturn in the North Node. Matters of the heart, romance, dating, children. It can be great for that. But there's going to be a difficult conversation that's likely going to be coming between you and another person. And, Mercury and Taurus can be a business partner, a financial advisor. It can be a spouse or a committed relationship. And it looks like there's going to be a little tension in terms of communicating just exactly what are we going to do? What are we going to do about a home situation? What are we doing about a family situation? And you will be a little bit more emotional. Positive is that Mars and Venus are trine. So actually, even though you're having this full moon in your sign, which is more about you, the tension with other people can kind of be negated if you are really focusing on this trine. And that's like Venus in the 6th. How can I help other people? How can I find the right people to help me? How can I get on track with a better health, better habits, a better schedule, and also be a little bit more productive and I think assertive out in the world? Like you can get support to kind of work through this. But still, you might feel like with the Sun-Uranus opposition approaching, the Sun-Uranus conjunction approaching, that your partner is acting sporadically and they're just kind of like all over the place. So you're going to see a little bit of everything. I feel like focus on the 1st house because that's going to be you. This is your moment. Rebirth is calling. This is about embracing your authenticity unapologetically. Yes, for some Scorpio and Scorpio risings, this can be an indication of a complete glow up, a change, a transformation, as well as a potential pregnancy especially with some of the quincunx to Jupiter in the 8th and also trines to the North Node in the 5th house, or just a realization of what it is that you actually do want when it comes to emotional security, intimacy, or love. The card that I got for you guys is the Hanged Man, which we all know has like a connection and a correlation to Pisces, by the way. So those trines to the 5th house might be really significant for matters of the heart. But this can be saying that you kind of feel like you're like in suspension at the moment. You're kind of stuck and you're reevaluating or you're looking at the situation from a different perspective. Who am I in comparison to who I am with others? Who am I out in the world at work compared to who I am in private? And you're feeling this tension that's getting kind of pulled in different directions. So all the fixed signs are going to kind of feel this briefly. I would say that, with the moon in your first house, it's going to be about how you feel, your emotions, your needs. And it may clash a little bit with that of somebody else's around the time of the full moon or between what home and work needs. And it's okay to be emotional and to take time so you're not overreacting, because the Hangman is a good card. It's saying, let me take a step back and think about this before I overreact or I make like a life-changing decision. Let me just let the dust kind of settle and see where things kind of land. So I think a lot of it's going to be about how you respond to changes that are going on in either your home, your work, or your relationship environment. Good luck, Scorpio. Let me know what happens. We've got Sag and Sag rising. You guys are going to be experiencing this full moon in Scorpio in your natal 12th house. The 12th house is hidden. It's subconscious, right? This is about spirituality, rest, healing, kind of a reset, maybe spending a little bit more time on your own. And truth be told, the full moons in the 12th house, we feel a little squirrely, so that can definitely be a theme as well. Emotional healing, resting and recuperating is generally what I recommend when you have a full moon in the 12th house. We are going to see at the time of the full moon that it is going to in conjunct our quincunx Jupiter, which rules your chart in the 7th. So retreating a little bit maybe from a relationship, reevaluating or reassessing what you've been afraid of, what blockages, what fears you have revolving around commitment and connection with other people. This can also be highly introspective. So taking some time to rest, be alone in nature, meditate, or take a long hot bath can be really helpful. Mars and Pluto are associated with this full moon, and they're in opposition between your 9th and your 3rd house. So it can mean that finally you're getting to travel and you're breaking out of where you have felt a little landlocked and you haven't been able to go somewhere, you haven't been able to continue your education, and now you're able to kind of move forward. We also see that at the time of the moon, we're going to have Mercury square Pluto. So Mercury is in your 6th house of work, healing, and habits, kind of squaring Mars, definitely squaring Pluto. Which means that there is going to be a huge focus in kind of getting grounded and situated with a routine. So if you're traveling prior to this, you're coming back and you're like, I'm exhausted, I need to rest, I need to kind of reset, now that I'm on a new time zone. Or maybe it means that there's some stuff that's kind of actually going on that's been stressing you out about work or your health or your pets that is requiring you to kind of take a step back and really kind of focus on, a reset. So I am predicting for you guys, there can be very significant dreams as well as, your intuition really revealing something very big for you. If you're meditating or you're journaling, it's going to help you process this a little bit better. It's not unusual to see some changes with your sleep schedule that can be happening here as well. If you're feeling run down, definitely rest. And I think the positive here is that if you are really tapped into healthy habits and routines and kind of feeling like you're on the ball, this may not be a full moon that's going to hit you so hard. And with trines that are happening to Saturn and the North Node in your 4th, a lot of it can also be connected to kind of getting your home in order, clearing out closets, clearing out your bedroom, coming up with a new nighttime routine. These can be really helpful when you're having a full moon in your 12th house. I've always loved like cleaning out my closet when I have those full moons and like decluttering and getting everything out, because all the things that are kind of hidden that we don't want to deal with, that's what we want to do. And it can be very like therapeutic. So just something to kind of think about if you need something, done around the house during the full moons. All right, let's take a look and see what the cards say for you. I get the King of Coins. So Tauruses, Capricorns, Virgos, okay, can play a role here. It can also mean that there's like a significant shift on the horizon financially, right? Scorpio and Taurus do deal with money. So it can mean that you're visualizing or doing some kind of work about bringing in, better resources, stronger resources. Maybe it means that you're letting go of any fears about blockages. You're moving away from scarcity mindset. It can also mean that there is like a big change that's getting ready to happen for you business-wise. That can be really positive, and your wealth is in your health. So it's like you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself so you can really show up and do the things that you feel like you need to do. Can be some help or assistance that can be coming unexpectedly out of the blue. And I would say watch for somebody who is going to be either an earth sign or somebody who is going to be strong in a position of finances, work, or some kind of guidance when it comes to getting where you want to go work-wise. Good luck. We've got Capricorn and Capricorn rising. You guys are going to be doing this full moon in Scorpio in your natal 11th house. So this is the house that's going to be dealing with community, friends, goals, networking, parties, allies, all that stuff. So there's a lot of kind of social things that are usually brewing during a full moon here. Interesting stuff, especially when I think back to 6 months ago when we had the new moon in Scorpio. Pluto was at 29 degrees in your sign. Mars was at 29 degrees in your 7th house. Likely, I would assume that was materializing as some kind of tension that you were having with a relationship. Could have been a family member, could have been a business, relationship. It could have been a spouse or a significant partner. And back then, it might have actually led you to kind of being a little bit more socially active and diffusing some of the tension that was going on in a relationship. Maybe you decided, you know what, I want to spend more time with my friends. I'm leaving this relationship, and you had a lot of support since then. It can also indicate that your goals are changing in some way. So usually there's like wish fulfillment or goal fulfillment that happens when we have transits in the 11th house. I like that this moon is trining Saturn, which is your ruler, which means it can be great for communication, networks, putting stuff online, social media, sending out newsletters and, wrapping up websites and connecting with people or traveling. What is difficult is that we're going to see Mars and Pluto are kind of still in opposition to each other. So there can be things coming up revolving around money stuff. And in recent months, it's been a back and forth over somebody else's resources. Could have been home or property related, maybe like a divorce, settlement, maybe dealing with an inheritance matter, a tax matter, which has had a direct impact on your finances and also your home life. So now that's wrapping up. I think the positive is whatever intense things are going on for you, either in terms of your self-esteem, your finances, your home situation, the full moon here, I think, is actually going to show you where you have a lot of support from friends. You have friends that are tough. They have been through it. They are going to be raw and direct and matter of fact, and there can be some great support coming from them and some communication with some of your friends. With that being said, a full moon in the 11th house can mean that there is a shift in your social circle, and that the shift is happening because you're wanting to align yourself with people who are going to be more like the person you're becoming. So you may find that, a Scorpio moon in the 11th, there are some people that are too much. There are some people that are draining you, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to let some of these people go. The full moon by sign sextiles you, and it also features planets in Taurus, which are trining your ascendant. So there's like a focus in being like, well, I might go and be with some people might be too much for me. There are some things that I enjoy doing that I want to do by myself, and more of a focus that I have on my relationships, my kids, my hobbies, And you might just see that kind of polarity play out a little bit throughout this particular full moon. The card that you get is the Five of Coins. Obviously, a card that we don't always want to get. This does talk about kind of feeling like out in the cold, right? And not always recognized or well received or supported by other people. So there can be this feeling where maybe you have been going through some significant change over the last 6 months, and you're taking note and taking stock of just exactly who has been in your corner, who showed up for you when you were in need, and who are the people that you felt like were supposed to have your back, but they weren't there, or they weren't as supportive, or they weren't as available when you needed them. And so I think that you're becoming aware of, hey, you know what? There are certain people that I've been friends with for a very long time, or people I've associated with, and I'm not feeling that connected, or I'm not feeling that supported. Or maybe you're just feeling like you're growing apart and there's something that's kind of shifting. And so for some of you guys, it could mean you're making new friends. For others, it could mean there's a prioritization going on with your hobbies, your children, your love life that's actually kind of diverting you and kind of showing you where you're kind of growing apart from certain people. So take note of where you're not getting what you need, or where people are not celebrating you or kind of building you up, right? Good luck, my Capricorns. We've got Aquarius and Aquarius rising. What's up, Aquarius? You're going to be doing this full moon in Scorpio in your natal 10th house. And as I've said to all the fixed signs, if you have anything 20 to 24 degrees, Aquarius, sun, moon, or rising, this is going to square you. It's a little intense. Equally, we're going to be seeing Pluto, the ruler of this moon, in opposition still with Mars in your 7th house of relationships and in a square with Mercury. So there's going to be some intense communication stuff, I think, going on at the time of the full moon, although most of it's going to be channeled into your 10th house, which is going to be touching on your career, your reputation. If you're retired, maybe your ambition. It can also be kind of connected to your role out in the world and how you want to be seen. The 10th house is a very public place. So when you have full moons here, all eyes are on you. Especially with the full moon kind of highlighting Pluto being the ruler and Pluto's retrograde in your sign, things you say, things you post, conversations you have, contracts you sign, all of these things are very, very significant. And I think with Pluto retrograde, a lot of you guys are either dealing with a significant change to your identity, maybe some health changes, some shifts going on revolving around the way that you see yourself, or some big changes with your career. But a full moon is basically a public win when it's in the 10th house. I just think that it could be a win or a challenge that comes to focus. So think like getting a promotion, starting a new job, launching a project, right? But it can also be having a conflict with a boss, going back and forth and experiencing some kind of power struggle with somebody out in the world. So just know there are angles getting activated in your chart. The full moon is about it can be about your work. Your 7th house kind of square that you're seeing can be about challenges from others. And Pluto on your ascendant definitely shines a spotlight on how you are changing or evolving. So take all that into consideration. I do think what I would find the most challenging is that the moon, which is going to be about work, employees, scheduling, or health, is debilitated, and it's in opposition to Uranus, which is your modern day ruler. So it means that there are things going on, professionally or out in the world that's demanding you to go and be in the spotlight or to show up at the office or make, big decisions and be a leader, when in reality, you're like, my house is a mess, something's going on with my family, I'm emotionally a little taxed, I'm moving, something is going on where you're like, my house is, or my home or my family is a real hot spot right now, but I have to go and do what I have to do and focus on this work or get this job done. And in the background, Mercury in your 4th house squaring Pluto means that there is some tense conversations revolving around money, resources, expenses, spending. And that's also playing out in the background. And that might be pushing and kind of fueling the fact that you're like, I have to get back to work or I have to stay focused on this project so we can kind of keep the whole thing running. What's positive is that you are going to see some trines from the moon to the North Node and Saturn in your 2nd house, which means you're committed, you're devoted to staying the path, you're believing in yourself, you're having healthy self-esteem, and you're really focused on smart money moves. So, own your power. Don't overthink things right now. Put yourself out there. I feel like this can be some big wins for you guys professionally, some changes with your work, but things that could actually be really positive for you financially down the road. The card that I got for you is the 5 of Swords. Okay, so this does deal with conflict, especially in communication. And you see some guy holding up a sword and everybody else is kind of walking away. So it's like somebody's ready to have a meeting of the minds, and other people are like, I don't want to do this. And I think a lot of it's like the Mercury square Pluto. You can be kind of so focused on some significant change going on out in the world or with your work that you can feel a little tense or like a little ready to go and kind of be on edge or mentally kind of wearing thin with some of your friends, family, and people that you live with. So don't be looking for a challenge during this full moon. I feel like, you can be put in a position where you can be given the spotlight and you can show people how you can lead, and you can do it diplomatically without getting into heated exchanges with other people. So you're going to be able to really highlight your emotional resilience, your maturity, and your ability to handle things under pressure without feeling like the communication is kind of breaking down. So take a pause, take a breath, lean into the North Node, Saturn in your 2nd house, and know that sometimes you have to make difficult decisions to ensure that everything kind of goes in the direction that it needs to really prioritize your self-esteem as well as your resources. Good luck, Aquarius. And we have Pisces and Pisces rising. What's up, Pisces? You're going to be doing this full moon. Let me bring this back here. I'm going to do this. We're going to be doing this full moon in your natal 9th house. There we go. And if you have anything 20 to 24 degrees Pisces, sun, moon, or rising, it'll be trining your personal Pisces placements. So you will like that energy. Having a full moon in the 9th house is bringing the attention to themes like adventure, your beliefs, expansion, legal matters, higher education. So sometimes there's a trip going on, you're at an airport, sometimes you're getting ready to graduate, or there's like a ceremony or a wedding that you're going to. Other times it can mean that there is just an opportunity to really kind of see the world in a different way. So the fact that it's going to be trining your Pisces placements does make it good for personal beliefs, it does make it good for your body, your appearance, and also travel. And at the time of the full moon, we're going to be seeing that there's going to be a lot of other aspects going on. I think for you, what my biggest focus is the fact that your traditional ruler, Jupiter, is actually squaring the north and the south node. Which means that there's something bigger on the horizon and at play in regards to changes that are happening for you, either emotionally, your family, or your home front. So it can materialize as there's a move coming, you don't see it yet, or maybe you want a trip that inspires you to consider moving somewhere else, or starting a new program, or learning something new. It can mean that you're going and sussing out a place before you consider moving there. So there is this push to kind of evolve and grow emotionally and also on the home front. Difficult aspects are definitely connected to like the Mars-Pluto opposition, which has been maybe changes with the retrograde Mars in recent months with your work, your health, or your routine. How that's maybe brought up some stress or some challenges revolving around security and stability. And we also see Mercury in a square with Pluto and Mars as well. So this does tell me traveling, changing your mind, learning, moving, communicating is all going to get highlighted here. Personally, I love a good full moon in the ninth house to go on a trip or to get away for a little bit, to get perspective. I think that plays very nicely with the Saturn trine to your first house, so it might give you the opportunity to kind of relax. It's possible that you'll get a new perspective from going on a journey, and it'll transform you. So explore things, I would say, that feel unknown with courage. Embrace maybe the fact that your education path, your living situation path, your private life might be a little different than what you anticipated it was going to be, but that's okay. Especially with Uranus coming into your fourth house pretty soon. You guys are going to see some kind of dramatic change happening on the home front. So stay flexible, keep an open mind. And this is a wonderful time to be, meeting with mentors, teachers, learning something, and also just really reevaluating like what your beliefs are in general. All right, so let's take a look at what cards come up for you. You get the Judgment card. So looks like a decision is being made, right? And in the ninth house, like there could be a legal proceeding, a legal judgment. If you guys are going through something like that, this can be really significant where there's like a definitive turning point. Something's going to, be done. But this could also mean that you're making a bigger decision and a bigger commitment, or this can be the kind of effects of something that you have decided a long time ago. So did you book a trip 6 months ago and now you're going? Did you sign up to go through a program, a while ago and now you're kind of graduating? Did you decide that you want to go for a new certification and now you're starting? I love this card because it's very definitive. So it's saying that like you're making up your mind about just exactly where you want to go, where you want to travel, where you want to be, and what you believe in. And now you're going to be acting on those beliefs. And I think a lot of that's going to be the trines to the North Node in Saturn, where you're like, I'm just trusting the process, things change. Maybe certain things fall apart so other things can come, together. And that's become your belief system and your kind of philosophy. And you're leading with that and seeing how listening to your gut is really transforming your life. Good luck, Pisces. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. That is the cosmic rundown for the full moon in Scorpio that's going to be happening this May. Obviously, the Scorpio full moons are always a bit of a game changer, and we see some kind of significant plot twist with some of the aspects to Uranus. So you will be seeing that the days and the hours and then the days to follow after this full moon. Let me know, how are you guys feeling about it? Definitely drop your rising sign and what aspects the full moon is making in your chart. I love to hear from you guys. I always get a lot of like really great feedback, and I try to get back to everybody. So leave me your comments, and I'll try to let you know what I think about what you got going on. And if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please make sure you share it with other astro-minded friends and smash that like button so you guys can see more of my videos that I have here on the channel. Definitely subscribe. It helps the channel grow. I really appreciate it. And I will see all of you guys very soon. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week and this up and coming Scorpio full moon. Take care.